Hello there. Welcome to the world of Pokemon. My name is Capsule the Collector. This world is inhabited by creatures called Pokemon. For some people, Pokemon are pets. Others use them for fights. Myself, I collect Pokemon as a profession. In pursuit of that, I created the Collector Dex, which focuses on putting together a Living Dex of each Pokemon and their additional forms caught in their original generation, getting every in-game trade, and finding special collections of Pokemon across the main series, spin-offs, and side series games that can be transferred to the main series. I want the Collector Dex to give Pokemon players a goal to work towards while experiencing every generation of Pokemon. While I've already finished my own Collector Dex, I wanted to do it all again and add in even more collections as I guide new players through their own journeys. Today, I'll be going over the entire Collector Dex featuring generations 1 through 9 so we can outline the roadmap for our journey through the world of Pokemon. My original idea was to just make my own personal Collector Dex in Pokemon Home and share it to the Pokemon community through a simple post. However, as I was reaching the end of my own Collector Dex journey, I decided to create this channel to let the community know about the Collector Dex while also improving and expanding on the Collector Dex beyond my original vision. While I put my personal Collector Dex on hold once I started working on this channel, I've still snagged most of the Collector Dex so far, which I currently have sitting in Pokemon Home. However, with all the additions I made while working on the channel, I'm going to use 78 different games to obtain 2,818 unique Pokemon. As new games and generations are released, I'll make updates to the Collector Dex, but for now, this video covers the entire Collector Dex. When putting together the Collector Dex, I wanted to include as many games or pieces of software as I could. The bulk of the 78 games comes from the main series, spin-off, and side series games that were released in America. However, I've also included regional variants like Japanese Crystal when that real-world region had an exclusive event or Pokemon. While I know they stretch the definition of a game, I also included physical releases of distribution events such as the GameCube multi-game demo discs that have Shiny Zigzagoon. Something that I don't currently own but would like to add into the Collector Dex game total are distribution cartridges for many events that were mostly seen in the DS era. Some games that I have also share distributions like the Japanese Colosseum bonus disc and Nintendo Special Disc, both having Pikachu and Celebi. However, I wanted to add as many different games to the Collector Dex as I could without having unnecessary regional duplicates like getting multiple languages of a game just to stretch out the game count. So, with shared distributions like the Japanese bonus disc and the Nintendo Special Disc, I decided to get Celebi from the bonus disc and Pikachu from the Nintendo Special Disc. When it comes to snagging each Pokemon, while you don't have to follow this rule, I'll be catching everything in a Pokeball when possible and keeping track of it so we can see how hard it is to catch them all. When I made my personal Collector Dex, my main focus was to get any Pokemon that can be transferred into Pokemon Home in a Pokeball. At times, this made things easier since I could use a Master Ball in the 3DS Virtual Console Game Boy games, and when I transferred it into Bank, it would say it was caught in a Pokeball. However, for this channel, I'll be focusing on keeping the Pokemon within their individual generations, which has opened up a ton of possibilities since many Pokemon had forms or special moves that were lost when they had to be transferred through the generations to Home. Another rule I gave myself for special collections is that I wanted the Pokemon to be unchanged from when you catch it. This usually comes in the form of not leveling it up. So, for example, I had multiple playthroughs of American Colosseum because I wanted to have an unused Shadow Pokemon alongside an Umbreon and Espeon that had not been leveled up. I got this idea from a challenge run I played for Colosseum where I only used Umbreon and Espeon and did not catch or purify a single Shadow Pokemon. I may change my tune on this as we go through the Collector Dex for the channel, but for now, I'll stick to this rule too. One obstacle that we'll run into every generation is timed or in-person exclusive Pokemon and event distributions. While approximately 86% of the Collector Dex can be obtained through official and repeatable methods today, about 14% require less than official means to activate events or services lost to time. I debated whether to include this 14%, however, these events represent an important part of Pokemon's history, and above all, it's awesome to see and catch them. Therefore, when I have to bend the rules, I'll state that I'm using Capsule Magic. Going forward, let's get some definitions locked down. For the Collector Dex, each generation will have 3 main categories: a Living Dex, the in-game trades, and then any special collections, which generally include Pokemon from spin-off games like Ranger and the side series like Pokemon Stadium. For our purposes, a Living Dex will involve catching every Pokemon in the generation it was introduced in. We'll have to catch one of each Pokemon instead of just evolving one to get its Dex entries. We will also have to catch every Pokemon form that was introduced that generation. So for Generation 3, we will be catching every new Hoenn Pokemon, plus catching Unknown exclamation point and Unknown question mark in Fire Red and Leaf Green, since those forms were introduced that generation. While some players collect 2 genders of each Pokemon, I won't be doing that. Instead, I'll only grab 2 genders of one Pokemon when they have what I consider substantially different gendered forms, such as Hippopotas and Unpheasant, which will count under the additional forms category. While some of these substantially different gender forms have no mechanical differences, according to Bulbapedia, Meowstic have differing abilities, Basculegion has different stats, and Indeedee and Oinkologne have different abilities and different stats. In-game trades are self-explanatory, but some generations have duplicates, so I'll specify which ones I'll be getting. Spin-off games that send special Pokemon to the main series games are integral to the Collector Dex. This can include games like PAL Region Pokemon Channel, which provides players with a Jirachi, or the Ranger series, which had many event distributions, with one of the most important being Manaphy. For side series games, Bulbapedia states that they're more closely tied with the main series and usually provide direct interaction. This mostly comes in the form of either storing Pokemon or directly trading with the main series games. Examples of side series games are Stadium, Coliseum, Ranch, Bank, and Home. I want to handle each generation as a season without moving on to the next until I've completed what I consider the core of the Collector Dex. This means before I cover Generation 2, I will want to have the Living Dex, in-game trades, and any special collections for Generation 1 from the side series games, which in this case just means the 9 prized Pokemon from Stadium and catching a Jinx in Japanese Blue. After I've completed the core of Generation 1, I will move on to Generation 2, then over time I will make special episodes to cover any spin-offs. Once I hit Generation 3 and have spin-offs such as PAL Region Pokemon Channel, I'll try and prioritize these over non-Collector Dex spin-offs such as Pokemon Dash. Eventually, my goal is to have episodes for every single Pokemon game. While this video only covers the Collector Dex games, I go over my entire collection and break down the cost of everything on my second channel, Capsule's Collection. Over on Capsule's Collection, I try to do more frequent uploads which aren't scripted like this channel. In total, my collection currently sits at over 110 physical games, a bunch of digital games, my special edition Pokemon consoles, and any other cool stuff I've picked up for the channel. When covering the Collector Dex, a resource that I put together to help with your journey is the capsule cards. Each capsule card will have the Pokemon's name, national dex number, sprite from each game that generation, and 3D model from the side series game that gen, such as Stadium or Coliseum. The right side shows the best way to catch or obtain them in each game that generation, along with the amount of Pokeballs it took me to catch them, and the total amount of Pokeballs I've used so far. Each capsule card is jam-packed, so you'll want to pause the video and take a screenshot of any Pokemon you need. However, don't worry about missing information since I make sure to talk about everything that is on each capsule card in the video. The capsule cards just give you an easy way to grab the info you need and pull it up on your phone while you're working on your own Collector Dex. With all that out of the way, let's dive into each generation to let you see what games we'll be using and what Pokemon we'll be catching as we get started on the Collector Dex. Generation 1 has a total of 6 different games we need to get 185 unique Pokemon. You'll want to have 2 Game Boy compatible systems with a link cable and an N64 with 2 controllers and 2 transfer packs to tackle this generation. The main series games you'll need for Gen 1 are Red, Blue, Yellow, the Japanese exclusive Green, and then Japanese Blue, which has a lot of differences from the American release. The side series game you'll need for Gen 1 is just American Stadium. For the Living Dex, we'll be using Red, Blue, and Yellow to get 151 Pokemon. The only Pokemon you'll need Capsule Magic to get for the Living Dex is Mew. For the in-game trades, we'll be using Green, Japanese Blue, and then Red, Blue, and Yellow to get a total of 24 in-game trades that count towards the Collector Dex. There are actually 26 in-game trades, but Mr. Mime and Jinx are in-game trade exclusive in America, so those two are already counted in the Living Dex portion of the Collector Dex. For each game specifically, Green has one exclusive in-game trade, which is a Nidoran female for Nidoran male named Chappie. Japanese Blue has 9 exclusive in-game trades, which give you a Mr. Mime named Masaru, a Poliwag named Romaton, a Kangaskhan named Rodan, a Tauros named Gayuta, a Gengar named Gosuke, a Farfetch named Akka, a Golem named Sabaru, a Slowpoke named Oscar, and a Krabby named Doraku. Red and Blue have 8 exclusives that count towards the Collector Dex, which give you a Mr. Mime named Marcel, a Nidoran female named Spot, a Nidorina named Terry, a Lickitung named Mark, a Farfetch named Dux, an Electrode named Doris, a Tangela named Crinkles, and a Seal named Sailor. Yellow has 6 exclusives that count towards the Collector Dex, which give you a Machamp named Ricky, a Dugtrio named Gurio, a Parasect named Spike, a Rhydon named Buffy, Dugong named Suzanne, and a Muck named Sticky. Finally, for special collections, we'll need Japanese Blue and Stadium to grab 10 Pokemon. In Japanese Blue, we'll want to catch Jinx since this is the only game in Gen 1 where Jinx isn't locked behind an in-game trade. In Stadium, we'll need to get online prize Pokemon. These prizes can't currently be officially transferred to home due to re-releases of Stadium being unable to transfer out to the main series titles. However, if you are able to transfer the prizes into a copy of Red, Blue, or Yellow and use Capsule Magic to put that save file on a 3DS copy of Red, Blue, or Yellow, then they can be transferred into home. While I did this when I put together my personal Collector Dex, we'll be keeping each generation separate for the channel. So, when the Gen 1 portion of the Collector Dex is finished, it will mostly be held on a copy of Yellow, and then the Japanese exclusives will be held on a copy of Japanese Blue. Gen 2 has a total of 5 different games we need to play to get 141 unique Pokemon for the Collector Dex. You'll want to have 2 Game Boy compatible systems with a link cable and then an N64 with 2 controllers and 2 transfer packs to tackle this generation. The main series games you'll need for Gen 2 are Gold, Silver, Crystal, and then Japanese Crystal. The side series game you'll need for Gen 2 is just American Stadium 2. For the Living Dex, we'll be using Gold, Silver, and Crystal to get 125 Pokemon. When a generation has additional forms of Pokemon, I will specify which Pokemon is counted into the base portion of the Living Dex and which are counted under the additional forms portion of the Living Dex. The base portion of the Living Dex has 100 Pokemon including Unknown A. The only Pokemon you'll need Capsule Magic to get for the base portion of the Living Dex in Gen 2 is Celebi. The additional forms portion of the Living Dex includes 25 Pokemon, which is made up of Unknown B through Z. For the in-game trades, we'll be using Gold, Silver, and Crystal to get a total of 9 in-game trades that count towards the Collector Dex. For each game specifically, Gold and Silver have 3 that count towards the Collector Dex, which give you Machop named Muscle, a Rhydon named Dawn, and a Rapidash named Runny. Crystal has 6 that count towards the Collector Dex, which give you an Onix named Rocky, Voltorb named Volty, Dodrio named Doris, Aerodactyl named Airy, Xatu named Paul, and Magneton named Maggie. Finally, for special collections, we'll need Crystal, Japanese Crystal, and American Stadium 2 to get 7 Pokemon for the Collector Dex. We will get 4 Pokemon in Crystal, including Red Gyarados, which is the most iconic shiny Pokemon of all time, Extreme Speed Dratini by answering the Dragon's Den questions properly, Jinx, which is catchable for the first time in America, and then Mr. Mime, which is obtainable outside of the in-game trades for the first time. We will get one Pokemon in Japanese Crystal using the Mobile Adapter GB and Capsule Magic to catch Celebi in Ilex Forest, since this event was not released outside of Japan during Generation 2. We will get two Pokemon in Stadium 2, which are the prize Farfetch'd and the prize Gligar. Just like Stadium in Generation 1, these prizes cannot currently be officially transferred to home due to re-releases of Stadium being unable to transfer out to the main series titles. However, if you're able to transfer the prizes into a copy of Gold, Silver, and Crystal and use Capsule Magic to put the save file on a 3DS copy of Gold, Silver, and Crystal, then they can be transferred into home. Just like Stadium 1, I did this for my personal Collector Dex, but for the channel, the Gen 2 portion of the Collector Dex will be held in a copy of Crystal, with the Japanese exclusive catchable Celebi being held on a copy of Japanese Crystal. Gen 3 is where things start to take off, as it has a total of 17 different games we need to get 334 unique Pokemon for the Collector Dex. You'll want to have two Game Boy Advances with a link cable, an American GameCube, Japanese GameCube, and Power Region GameCube with one Game Boy Advance to GameCube link cable, and then an American e-reader and a Japanese e-reader plus. Game Boy Advances are region free, so they can play both Japanese and American games. The GameCube to GBA link cable is also region free, so you just need one to share across all three GameCubes. The main series games you'll need for Gen 3 are Ruby, Sapphire Emerald, Japanese Emerald, Fire Red, and Leaf Green. The side series games you'll need for Gen 3 are Colosseum and its bonus disc, Japanese Colosseum and both its bonus disc, and the Nintendo Special Disc, Gale of Darkness and its demo that can be found on Demo Disc 31, Box Ruby and Sapphire, and then Demo Disc 14 and Demo Disc 16. The spin-off game you'll need for Gen 3 is Channel, released in the PAL region since it came with an exclusive Jirachi distribution. The e-reader cards you'll need are the American Eon ticket to use with Ruby and Sapphire, and then the Japanese Colosseum Double Battle e-cards to unlock 3 exclusive Shadow Pokemon in Japanese Colosseum. For the Living Dex, we'll be using Ruby, Sapphire, Emerald, Fire Red, Leaf Green, the American Colosseum bonus disc, and Gale of Darkness to get 144 Pokemon. The base portion of the Living Dex has 135 Pokemon, including Cast Form, Normal Form, and you'll have to use Capsule Magic to get Normal Form Deoxys and Emerald, which will have to be traded over to Ruby and Sapphire to actually turn into the normal form. Luckily, you won't have to use Capsule Magic for any other mythical this generation, since we can get Jirachi from the American Colosseum bonus disc. The additional forms portion of the Living Dex has 9 Pokemon, including Sunny, Rainy, and Snowy Cast Form, Unknown Exclamation Point, which I'll get in Fire Red, Unknown Question Mark, which I'll get in Leaf Green, and you'll have to use Capsule Magic in Fire Red to get Deoxys Attack Form, Leaf Green to get Deoxys Defense Form, and Emerald to get Deoxys Speed Form. Finally, in Gale of Darkness, we'll want to keep an unpurified Shadow Lugia, which sadly can't be traded out of the game. Since Cast Form has 3 additional weather forms, which can only be active during battle using weather moves, we'll count the 3 Cast Form weather forms by having one with Sunny Day, one with Rain Dance, and one with Hail. For the in-game trades, we'll be using Ruby, Sapphire, Emerald, Fire Red, and Leaf Green to get 18 unique trades. 3 can be found in Ruby and Sapphire, 11 can be found in Fire Red and Leaf Green, and 4 can be found in Emerald. There are actually 4 additional in-game trades that can be found in Gale of Darkness, however those will be counted under Gale of Darkness's Special Collection. Finally, we'll be getting 172 Pokemon for Special Collections, which come from the following games. We will play Ruby and Sapphire with the Eon ticket to get the Southern Island Latios and Latios. In Emerald, we will get 3 Johto starters from Professor Birch after completing the Regional Dex, which does not require Jirachi or Deoxys. We only get 1 starter per save file of Emerald, so this will require 3 save files. While later generations began to offer special rewards such as the Shiny Charm for Pokedex completion, These 3 starters are the first Pokedex completion reward outside of the diplomas. Japanese Emerald will need Capsule Magic to get us to Faraway Island so we can catch Mew. In Colosseum, we can find 48 Shadow Pokemon and 4 non-Shadow Pokemon, which are Umbreon, Espeon, Plusle, and then Mount Battle Ho-Oh. Playing Japanese Colosseum with the Double Battle E-cards will net us 3 E-Reader Shadow Pokemon, the bonus disc can get us Celebi, and then the Nintendo Special Disc will get us Pikachu. In Demo Disc 31, we can play the Gale of Darkness demo and then use Capsule Magic to give ourselves the Rocks America Tour Metang that was given to players who completed the demo. In Gale of Darkness, we can find 83 Shadow Pokemon, which includes our Purified Shadow Lugia, and we can also find 17 regular Pokemon, which includes Eevee, the Wild Pokemon, the in-game trades, and then the Mount Battle 3. One last Pokemon in Gale of Darkness, which will have us stretch the definition of catching, is the Battle Bingo Bonsly. Gale of Darkness came out about a year before Generation 4 kicked off with Diamond and Pearl. During the lead up to Gen 4, Pokemon showed off many Gen 4 Pokemon by including them in spin-offs like Mystery Dungeon Red and Blue Rescue Team, side series titles like Gale of Darkness, and then movies like Lucario and the Mystery of Mew. Gale of Darkness included Munchlax and Bonsly in different portions of the game, with Bonsly having a significant main story mission dedicated to searching for it. After this mission, you are able to lure Bonsly into a Pokespot and sneak up on it to grab it so you can take it back to its owner. Once this happens, you receive the Bonsly Bingo Sheet, which lets you use Bonsly during the battle minigame Battle Bingo. This Bonsly only has access to Rock Slide and is locked behind a battle minigame, but I think it's such a significant usage of the Pokemon that I'll be adding Battle Bingo Bonsly to the Gen 3 Collector Dex. Bonsly is also my favorite Pokemon, which I think stems from its inclusion in Gale of Darkness, so this edition is very special to me. Next up, we have Box Ruby and Sapphire, which will net us 4 Pokemon eggs that come with special moves after we deposit a ton of Pokemon. Hopping over to PAL Region Channel, we can get Jirachi, which can then be transferred to an American Gen 3 game since the languages are both English. Using Demo Disc 14, we can get a shiny Zigzagoon with the original trainer, Ruby. And finally, using Demo Disc 16, we can get a shiny Zigzagoon with the original trainer, Sapphire. While Generation 1 and 2 were cut off from home until the 3DS Virtual Console releases, everything from Generation 3 onwards can be transferred into Pokemon Home. In fact, I remember when I was nearing the end of my personal Collector Dex, it took an entire day to trade everything out of Gale of Darkness and transfer it all the way up. A cool fact is that for everything in Gen 3 and beyond, games from multiple regions around the world could finally trade between themselves no matter the language. Accordingly, most of Gen 3's portion of the Collector Dex will all be held in a copy of Emerald, with Shadow Lugia and Battle Bingo Bonsly being held on a copy of Gale of Darkness. Generation 4 has 13 different games we need to get 365 unique Pokemon for the Collector Dex. You'll want to have at least 2 DS Lite systems, but it might be best to have 4 of them when it comes to the Ranger Guardian Signs multiplayer missions. You'll want to have an American Wii as well as a Japanese Wii. Finally, you'll want to have 1 to 3 Pokewalkers. The DS and Pokewalker are both region free, so they can use both Americans and Japanese games. The main series games you'll need for Gen 4 are Diamond, Pearl, Platinum, Japanese Platinum, Heart Gold, Soul Silver, and Japanese Soul Silver. The side series games you'll need for Gen 4 are Battle Revolution, Ranch, and Japanese Ranch with the Platinum update. The spin-off games you'll need for Gen 4 are Ranger, which is technically a Gen 3 game, but the Manaphy event can only be sent to Gen 4, Ranger Shadows of Almia, and Ranger Guardian Signs. For the Living Dex, we'll be using Diamond, Pearl, Platinum, and Ranger to get 140 Pokemon. The base portion of the Living Dex has 107 Pokemon, including Plant Cloak, Burmy, and Wormadam, Sharam Overcast Form, East Sea Shellos and Gastrodon, Male Hippopotas and Hippowdon, Base Form Rotom, and Altered Form Giratina. For mythicals, we'll be using Capsule Magic to get event items to let us catch Shaman and Darkrai. While some copies of Ranger may have an unclaimed mana fee, we will use to make sure we get the RangerNet mana fee. Using this mana fee, we can also hatch the mythical Fione. For the last mythical Arceus, I debated whether we should use Capsule Magic to get an event distribution like Mew and Celebi. However, I want to catch a Pokemon whenever possible, and Arceus is unofficially catchable in Gen 4. Game Freak created the Flute, which was meant to be an event item that was distributed to players like Oak's Letter and the Member Card. With the Flute, you're able to access the Hall of Origin, which contains a catchable Arceus. While the Flute was eventually released in Generation 8 with Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, it was never released during Generation 4. Since the goal of the Collector Dex is to experience awesome aspects of every generation of Pokemon, I've decided to use Capsule Magic to activate this never-released event. Accordingly, we will be using the Flute to catch Arceus in its normal type form in the Hall of Origin. The additional forms portion of the Living Dex has 33 Pokemon including Sandy and Trash Cloak Burmy and Wormadam, West Sea Shellos and Gastrodon, Female Hippopotas and Hippowdon, Cherim Sunshine form, the 5 elemental Rotom forms using Soul Silver since the forms can be changed without an event item, and Origin form Giratina. Since Cherim Sunshine form can only be active during battle with harsh sunlight, I will have a Cherim with Sunny Day to count this form. I'll need to use Capsule Magic to get a few more forms. First is Shaman Sky form, which will have to stay in my party since it can only be active in the party during the day. Second, I'll need a lot of save files to catch 16 more Hall of Origin Arceuses to have its 16 different plate forms. Finally, for additional forms, I will use the Fateful Encounter Shiny Pichu to get the Heart Gold and Soul Silver exclusive Spiky-Eared Pichu, which cannot be traded or transferred out of those games. For the in-game trades, we'll be using Diamond, Pearl, Platinum, Heart Gold, and Soul Silver to get 14 unique trades. 4 can be found in Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum, and 10 can be found in Heart Gold and Soul Silver. While we will be getting Pokemon through trades in Ranch and Japanese Ranch, those will be counted under the special collection for each of those games. Finally, we'll be getting 210 Pokemon for special collections, which come from the following games. In Platinum, we will need Capsule Magic to get a Fateful Encounter Regigigas. This will then let us encounter and catch the 3 Regis in Platinum, which are inaccessible otherwise. Funnily enough, this is our only way to catch the Regis in Gen 4, so we'll use these 3 Regis to catch Regigigas for the Gen 4 Living Dex. In Heart Gold and Soul Silver, we'll be using Capsule to get the event distribution Shiny Pichu, which we have to use for the Spiky-Eared Pichu event. Then we can use Magic and multiple save files with our Hall of Origin Arceus to get 3 level 1 legendaries in the Sinja Ruins event. This event officially used a distribution Arceus, but works with the Hall of Origin Arceus as well. Finally, we will use the Pokewalker to get 144 Pokemon, including 18 Pokemon that can only be found in 3 event courses that need Capsule Magic to unlock. In my personal Collector Dex, I actually didn't get all the Pokewalker Pokemon, instead I just grabbed Munchlax from the event-exclusive Winner's Path, which has Explosion. In Japanese Soul Silver, we'll use the Pokewalker to get 18 Pokemon that can be found on 3 Japan-exclusive courses, which we need Capsule Magic to unlock. In Ranger Shadows of Almia, we will need Cap to reactivate 3 Wi-Fi event missions that will reward us with a Manaphy Egg, Riolu, and Darkrai. In Ranger Guardian Signs, we will need Soul to reactivate 4 Wi-Fi event missions that'll reward us with a Manaphy Egg, 4 Deoxys forms, Heatran, and Shaman. The 4 Deoxys forms will be one of the hardest challenges in the Collector Dex since the mission requires you play multiplayer. This mission can be completed solo using Mag, but you get a different Deoxys form depending on how fast you finish the mission. In Battle Revolution, we will be able to get Pikachu after beating the game, and then using 2 codes we can get Electivire and Magmortar. Branch has a special place in my heart since I grew up with it. I actually still have my childhood Wii with Ranch on it, and I have the first Mew I got through putting 999 Pokemon into the game. For the Collector Dex, we'll be getting all of Haley's trades, which give us 22 Pokemon for the Collector Dex. I'll have to use a Japanese copy of Ranch with the Platinum update and Jik to get 5 event trades, which are Golgo's Octillery, Baba's Flygon, Yukina's Meowth, Akiyama's Slacking, and Red's Metagross. As we wrap up this generation, all 365 unique Pokemon from the Generation 4 portion of the Collector Dex will be held on a copy of Soul Silver. Generation 5 has a total of 8 different games we need to get 520 unique Pokemon for the Collector Dex. You'll want to have 2 different 3DS systems for this generation. The main series games you'll need for Gen 5 are Heart Gold, Soul Silver, Black, White, Black 2, and White 2. Note that Heart Gold and Soul Silver were already counted towards the Collector Dex total since they were released during Gen 4. The side series games you'll need for Gen 5 are Dream Radar, and you'll need Capsule Magic to use Dream World. For the Living Dex, we'll be using Black, White, Black 2, and White 2 to get 178 Pokemon. The base portion of the Living Dex has 156 Pokemon, including Male and Pheasant, Red Stripe Basculin, Standard Mode Darmanitan, Spring Form Deerling and Sawsbuck, Male Frillish and Gillescent, and Incarnate Tornadus, Thundurus, and Landorus. We will have to use Capsule Magic in Black and White to get Zorua and catch Zoroark. This will actually involve 4 event distribution Pokemon in Heart Gold and Soul Silver, which are Celebi and the 3 Shiny Beasts. If we use the relocator to specifically transfer Celebi into Black and White, we are given Zorua. Zorua can be obtained in Black 2 and White 2, however, this is in Zorua, which will count in its own special collection. Otherwise, Zorua is uncatchable this generation. If we use the relocator for one of the 3 Shiny Beasts, we will get access to the Catchable Zoroark event, which is the only way to catch Zoroark this generation. As for the mythicals this generation, we will need Magic in Black and White to access the catchable Victini in Liberty Garden. In any of the main series games, we can also use Capsule to get distributions of Ordinary Form Keldeo, Meloetta Pirouette Form, and No Drive Genesect. The additional forms portion of the Living Dex has 22 Pokemon, including Female Unpheasant, Blue Stripe Basculin, Zen Mode Darmanitan, which is a battle-only form but requires the Zen Mode ability, Summer, Fall, and Winter form Deerling and Sawsbuck, Female Frillish and Gillescent, Therian Tornadus, Thundurus, and Landorus, which require extra save files of Black and White to catch, since the Dream Radar legendaries are in their own special collection, and Black and White Kyurem. We will have to use Capsule Magic to get additional mythical forms. We will need a Keldeo for its Resolute form, Meloetta with the battle-only Aria form, which will count by giving it Relic Song, and Burn, Chill, Douse, and Shock form Genesects. For the in-game trades, we'll be using Black, White, Black 2, and White 2 to get 31 unique trades. 7 can be found in Black and White, and 24 can be found in Black 2 and White 2. 7 will be regular trades, however, 17 unique trades can be made with Yancey and Curtis, who you meet based upon your chosen gender. Finally, we will be getting 311 Pokemon for special collections, which come from the following games. Using Capsule Magic in Heart Gold and Soul Silver, we can get a Fateful Encounter Celebi and 3 Fateful Encounter Shiny Beasts, which will get us Zorua and Zoroark, as we already discussed. These 4 Pokemon will be sent to Black and White to be counted in the Generation 5 Collector Dex. Playing Black 2 and White 2, we can catch 14 events Pokemon with the additional gift Zora within as its original trainer. Then we can climb Black Tower and White Tree Hollow to get a Shiny Dratini and Shiny Gible from Benga. Finally, if we see every Pokemon in the Black 2 and White 2 regional decks, we will get access to the Nature Preserve, where we can catch a shiny Haxorus, which is one of the coolest regional dex rewards and doesn't even require catching the regional dex. By playing Dream Radar, we can get 26 total Pokemon, including the Therian form Forces of Nature, which will all be in a Dream Ball. Finally, by using an insane amount of Capsule Magic, we will get 265 Pokemon that were originally available from Pokemon Dream World, which was an online service during Generation 5, which has unfortunately been shut down. Funnily enough, when I was working on my personal Collector Dex, I found a Marowak I had stored in home, which I realized was from Dream World when I played it back in the day. For the Generation 5 portion of the Collector Dex, all 520 unique Pokemon will be put in a copy of White 2. Generation 6 has 10 different games we need to get 200 unique Pokemon for the Collector Dex. You'll want to have 2 American 3DSs, 1 Japanese 3DS, and 1 PAL Region 3DS. The main series games you'll need for Gen 6 are X, PAL Region X, Y, Japanese Y, the Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire demo, the Japanese Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire demo, Omega Ruby, Japanese Omega Ruby, and then Alpha Sapphire. The side series game you'll need for Gen 6 is Bank. For the Living Dex, we'll be using X, PAL Region X, Y, Japanese Y, Omega Ruby, and Alpha Sapphire to get 178 unique Pokemon for the Collector Dex. The base portion of the Living Dex has 72 Pokemon, including Modern Pattern Vivillon, Pyroar Male, Red Flabebe, Floette, and Florges, Natural Form Furfrou, Male Meowstic, and Average Size Pumpkaboo and Gourgeist. We will use Capsule Magic to get the 3 mythicals Diancie, Hoopa Confined, and Volcanion. The additional forms portion of the Living Dex has 56 additional forms, which includes the 6 forms of Cosplay Pikachu, using Capsule Magic to get Arceus Fairy form, changing the system region on my American, Japanese, and PAL Region 3DSs to get the 17 additional patterns of Vivillon. Then we can use Capsule Magic to get Fancy and Pokeball pattern Vivillon, which were only distributed during events. Next up is Pyroar Female, Blue, Orange, White, and Yellow Flabebe, Floette, and Florges, the 9 Furfrou trims, Female Meowstic, Small, Large, and Supersized Pumpkaboo and Gourgeist, and last we can use Capsule Magic to get a Confined Hoopa and use the Prison Bottle to transform it into its unbound form. I wanted to be able to count Mega Evolutions as well, since there are 50 total Mega Evolutions and Primal Reversions that can be added to the Collector Dex. To add these in, we need to find the best way to catch the Pokemon, and then we need to get its corresponding Mega Stone, get the red and blue orb, and give Rayquaza the move Dragon Ascent. We will get 27 Mega Evolutions in X and Y, and then 21 Mega Evolutions and 2 Primal Reversions in Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. While Mega Blaziken was introduced in X and Y, it required a time-limited event. Since it can be easily obtained as a starter in Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, I'll be getting it there. We will also need to use Capsule Magic to get a second Diancie to count for the Mega Evolution. For the in-game trades, we'll be playing X, Y, Omega Ruby, and Alpha Sapphire to get 12 unique trades. 9 can be found in X and Y, and 3 can be found in Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. Finally, we'll be getting 10 Pokemon for special collections, which come from the following games. By beating the American Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire demo, we get a Glalie with its Mega Stone that we will send to Omega Ruby. By beating the Japanese Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire demo, we get a Steelix with its Mega Stone that we can send to Japanese Omega Ruby. Using Omega Ruby, we will catch Deoxys from the Delta episode, which is the first time a mythical Pokemon was catchable outside of events, which has become a welcome trend in the series. Finally, if we use we will get the 7 event Pokemon given through Bank this generation, including Celebi, the Hidden Ability Gen 2 starters, and the Hidden Ability Reggie Trio. For the Generation 6 portion of the Collector Dex, all 200 unique Pokemon will be held in a copy of Omega Ruby. Generation 7 has a total of 11 different games we need to get 235 unique Pokemon for the Collector Dex. You'll want to have 2 3DSs, 2 Switches or 2 Switch 2s, a brand new Pokeball Plus, and a smartphone. The main series games you'll need for Gen 7 are the Sun and Moon demo, Sun and Moon, Ultra Sun, Ultra Moon, Crystal for the 3DS, Let's Go Pikachu, and Let's Go Eevee. The side series games you'll need for Gen 7 are Transporter and Bank. Note that Bank was already counted towards the Collector Dex total since it was released during Generation 6. The spin-off game you'll need for Gen 7 is Go. For the Living Dex, we'll be using the Sun and Moon demo, Sun, Moon, Ultra Sun, Ultra Moon, Let's Go Pikachu, Let's Go Eevee, and then Go. The base portion of the Collector Dex has 88 Pokemon, including Pom-Pom Oricorio, Midday Lycanroc, Unschoolable Wishiwashi, Base Form Silvally, and Red Core Minior. For Mythicals, we can use a QR code to get Magearna in Sun, Moon, Ultra Sun, and Ultra Moon. We will have to use Capsule Magic to get Marshadow and Zeraora from event distributions. Finally, we will use Go to transfer a Meltan from Let's Go Pikachu or Eevee, and then evolve a Meltan into Melmetal in Go, and then transfer it into Let's Go Pikachu or Eevee. The additional forms portion of the Living Dex has 42 additional forms, including the first wave of Cap Pikachus. Partner Cap Pikachu can actually be obtained through a QR code in Sun and Moon and Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon like Magearna, however the original Hoenn, Sinnoh, Unova, Kalos, and Alola Cap Pikachus have to be received through Gishnam. Ash Greninja is an in-battle only form, but it requires a Greninja with the Battle Bond ability, which is the reward for beating the Sun and Moon demo and can be transferred to Sun and Moon. Then you'll want to get Zygarde 10% form and complete form, Bael, Pau, and Sensu Oricorio forms, Midnight Lycanroc, and then we'll have to use to get a Rockruff with the Own Tempo ability, which lets it evolve into Dusk Lycanroc in Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, Schoolable Wishiwashi, all 17 memory forms of Silvally, Orange, Yellow, Green, Blue, Indigo, and Violet Core Minior, Duskmane and Dawnwing's Necrozma, and then Ultra Necrozma, which is an in-battle only form using the Ultra Necrozmium Z, so to count for the Collector Dex, we'll get an additional Dawnwing's Necrozma and have it hold the Ultra Necrozmium Z. Generation 7 also introduces regional forms, so we'll also be snagging 18 Alolan form Pokemon to add to the Living Dex portion of the Collector Dex. For the in-game trades, we'll be playing Sun, Moon, Ultra Sun, and Ultra Moon, Let's Go Pikachu, and Let's Go Eevee to get 24 unique trades. 7 can be found in Sun and Moon, 7 more in Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, and finally 10 trades will be made in Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee. Next, we'll be getting 63 Pokemon for special collections, which come from the following games. With the re-release of Crystal on the 3DS, you can now get the GS Ball after beating the champion, which lets you catch Celebi in Ilex Forest. Once caught, we will use the Poke-Transporter to transfer Celebi out of the Virtual Console release. By using Sun, Moon, Ultra Sun, and Ultra Moon, we can get 11 unique Totem Pokemon and 44 unique Pokemon from Pokepelago. Exclusively through the Mantine Surf minigame in Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, we will get a special Pikachu as a reward for high scores in every course. Using a brand new Pokeball Plus with Let's Go Pikachu, we will be able to receive Mew, which can only be received once per Pokeball Plus. Finally, if we use Capsule Magic, we will get 5 event Pokemon through Bank this generation, including the Hidden Ability Gen 7 starters and Hidden Ability Passimian and Oranguru. For the Generation 7 portion of the Collector Dex, most of the 235 unique Pokemon will be stored on a copy of Ultra Moon. But Meltan, Melmetal, the Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee trades, and the Pokeball Plus Mew will be stored on a copy of Let's Go Pikachu. Generation 8 has a total of 7 different games we need to get 581 unique Pokemon for the Collector Dex. You'll want to have 2 Switches or 2 Switch 2s and a smartphone. The main series games you'll need for Gen 8 are Sword, Shield, and the Isle of Armor and Crown Tundra DLC for both games, Brilliant Diamond, Shining Pearl, and Legends Arceus. The side series game you'll need for Gen 8 is Home. The spin-off game you'll need for Gen 8 is Go. Note that Go was already counted towards the Collector Dex total since it was released during Generation 7. For the Living Dex, we'll be using Sword, Shield, and the Isle of Armor DLC and Crown Tundra DLC for both games, Legends Arceus, Home, and Go. The base portion of the Living Dex has 96 standard Pokemon including Amped Form Toxtricity, Phony Form Sinistea and Poltegeist, Vanilla Cream Strawberry Alchemy, Male Indeedee, Hero of Many Battles Zacian and Zamazenta, Urshifu Single Strike, Male Basculegion, and Incarnate Form Enamorus. The only mythical this generation is Zarude, which we'll have to use Capsule Magic to get through a distribution. The additional forms portion of the Living Dex has 81 additional forms, including World Cat Pikachu, which will take Capsule Magic to get through a distribution, Original Color Magearna, which requires National Dex completion in Home, which might have to be put in the latest generation since each time Home gets new Pokemon, this requirement can only be met by getting their Dex entries as well. Zen Mode Galarian Darmanitan, which is an in-battle only mode, but just like its Gen 5 counterpart, it requires the ability Zen Mode, Low Key Toxtricity, Antique Form Sinistea and Poltegeist, all 62 Alchemy forms, including the Star Suite and Ribbon Suite forms, which were originally given out through events, but can be obtained through the Cramomatic in the Isle of Armor, Female Indeedee, Crown Zacian and Zamazenta, Urshifu Rapid Strike, Calyrex Ice Rider and Shadow Rider, Dada Zarude, which will require to get through a distribution, Origin Form Dialga and Palkia, Multi-Type Arceus by holding the Legend Plate, White Stripe Basculin, Female Basculegion, and Therian Form Enamorus. The Regional Forms portion of the Living Dex has 35 regional forms, which is made of 19 Galarian forms and 16 Hisuian forms. Finally, I wanted to make sure to count the 33 Gmax forms, so we'll want to catch them in a Dynamax den when possible. However, Meowth, Snorlax, and Toxtricity are all special event exclusive, so we'll have to catch those Pokemon and then use Gmax Soup on them. The last Gmax form is Melmetal, which is an ongoing event Pokemon that we can get by transferring a Pokemon from Go to Home to receive. For the in-game trades, we'll be playing Sword, Shield, and the Isle of Armor DLC for both games, Brilliant Diamond, and Shining Pearl to get 26 unique trades. 22 can be found in Sword and Shield and the Isle of Armor DLC, and 4 in-game trades can be found in Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl. This generation will be getting 310 Pokemon for special collections, which come from the following games. In Sword, Shield, and the Isle of Armor DLC and Crown Tundra DLC for both games, we can find 11 prize Pokemon for collecting all 151 Alolan Diglets on the Isle of Armor, which is also going to require 3 save files since the Gen 7 starters depend on the starter you pick. Next, you'll want to grab the catchable Keldeo in the Crown Tundra, which is the first time this mythical was catchable. Finally, by playing a ton of Dynamax Adventures, we'll get 273 Pokemon, which is split between the 226 encounterable Pokemon and the 46 final boss Pokemon. In Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, we'll want to get the Azure Flute by completing Legends Arceus and finally go to the Hall of Origin to officially catch an Arceus. In Legends Arceus, we'll want to use 2 save files to get Dialga and Palkia in the Origin Ball, then catch Fiona and Manaphy, which are catchable for the first time, and then next we'll catch both Darkrai and Shaman, which are finally catchable outside of limited time events. For home events this generation, we'll always be able to get the Pikachu you get when you make an account on the Switch, Hidden Ability Gen 1 starters, which are only 1 per account, so you'll need to get 3 accounts, the Hidden Ability Gen 8 starters, the Hidden Ability Gen 4 starters, and Hidden Ability Legends Arceus starters. You only have a month after signing into your home account using your smartphone to get Eevee using the Wonder Box, Rotom using the GTS, and Pichu for completing a challenge. Finally, we'll need Capsule Magic to get some limited time event Pokemon, which are Shiny Zeraora and Gmax, Bulbasaur, and Squirtle. The 581 unique Pokemon in the Generation 8 Collector Dex will be split up since every form and Pokemon exclusive to Legends Arceus will be stored there, while every other one will be kept in a copy of Shield. Until Winds and Waves releases in 2027, we're still in Generation 9. While this total might change, Gen 9 currently has a total of 7 different games we need to get 258 unique Pokemon for the Collector Dex. You'll want to have 2 Switches or 2 Switch 2s and a smartphone. The main series games you'll need for Gen 9 are Scarlet, Violet, and the Hidden Treasure of Area Zero DLC for both games, Legends ZA and the Mega Dimension DLC, and the Fire Red and Leaf Green re-releases for the Switch. The side series game you'll need for Gen 8 is Home, and note that Home was already counted towards the Collector Dex since it was released during Gen 8. The spin-off game you'll need for Gen 8 is Go, and note that Go was already counted towards the Collector Dex total since it was released during Generation 7. For the Living Dex, we'll be using Scarlet, Violet, and the Hidden Treasure of Area Zero DLC for both games, Legends ZA and the Mega Dimension DLC, Home, and Go. The base portion of the Gen 9 Living Dex has 120 standard Pokemon including Male Oinkologne, Mousehold family of 4, Green Plumage Squawkabilly, Dunsparce 2-segment form, Gimmighoul chest form, Poltergeist counterfeit form, Sinistcha unremarkable form, and the mythical Pecharunt, which is available to catch through the Mochi Mayhem event, which is still available by getting the mythical Pechaberry through an ongoing internet distribution. The additional forms portion of the Living Dex has 16 additional forms including Blaze and Aqua Breed Paldean Tauros, Female Oinkologne, Mousehold family of 3, Blue, White, and Yellow Plumage Squawkabilly, Tatsugiri Droopy form and Stretchy form, Dunsparce 3-segment form, Gimmighoul roaming form, which has to be caught in Go and transferred to Home, Blood Moon Ursaluna, Poltergeist artisan form, Sinistcha masterpiece form, Wellspring, Hearth Flame, and Cornerstone Mask Ogerpon, and finally Eternal Flower Floette. There are only 2 regional forms this generation, which are Paldean Tauros and Wooper. Just like Generation 6, we can add 48 new Mega Evolutions this gen by catching the Pokemon and getting their Mega Stone. Some Mega Evolutions like Mega Garchomp Z require an ongoing mystery gift distribution. Furthermore, the catchable Zeraora in Legends ZA will count in this part of the Collector Dex. We will be able to get the standard color Magearna in Legends ZA, but to get Mega Original color Magearna, we'll have to complete the National Dex in a second home account. Finally, to count Mega Floette, we'll have to use the second save file of Legends ZA to snag an extra Eternal Flower Floette. For the in-game trades, we'll be playing Scarlet, Violet, and the Hidden Treasure of Area Zero DLC for both games, and Legends ZA with the Mega Dimension DLC to get 38 unique trades. 33 trades can be found in Scarlet, Violet, and the Hidden Treasure of Area Zero DLC, including a shiny Blitzel. Then, by playing Legends ZA with the Mega Dimension DLC, we can get an additional 5 trades. While I think this will grow before Gen 10 comes out, there are currently 32 Pokemon that fall into the Special Collections category, which can be found in the following games. By playing Scarlet, Violet, and the Hidden Treasure of Area Zero DLC for both games, we can find Fancy Pattern Vivillon, which is catchable for the first time, the 6 catchable Titan Pokemon, the Shiny Munchlax from beating Ogerpon Alston, and the catchable Meloetta in Blueberry Academy, which is the first time Meloetta can be caught. In the Legends ZA Mega Dimension DLC, we get a ton of Mythicals which are catchable for the first time. Since we counted Zeraora for its Mega Evolution, the remaining new catchable mythicals are Deontay, Meltan, Hoopa, Volcanion, Genesect, and Marshadow. We will also get a Melmetal as a reward for completing a side mission, which is the first time Melmetal is available outside Go or events. In the Fire Red re-release for the Switch, we'll want to get the Aurora ticket by beating the game, and then we can catch Attack Form Deoxys since this was previously an event exclusive in Gen 3. In the Leaf Green re-release for the Switch, we'll be able to get Defense Form Deoxys by going through the same method. However, in addition, we'll want to use the Mystic ticket to catch Lugia and Ho-Oh at the previously event exclusive location, Naval Rock. Finally, for home events this generation, we'll be able to get the Hidden Ability Gen 9 starters, Shiny Meloetta for completing the Paldea, Kitakami, and Blueberry Pokedexes from Scarlet, Violet, and the Hidden Treasure of Area 0 DLC, Shiny Manaphy for completing the Sinnoh Pokedex from Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, Shiny Enamorus for completing the Hisui Pokedex from Legends Arceus, Shiny Meltan for completing the Kanto Pokedex from Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, Shiny Keldeo for completing the Galar, Isle of Armor, and Crown Tundra Pokedexes from Sword, Shield, and the Isle of Armor and Crown Tundra DLC for both games, the Alpha Legend ZA starters, and Shiny Volcanion for completing the Lumiose, Hyperspace, and Mega Evolution Pokedexes in Legend ZA and the Mega Dimension DLC. It's awesome to see Game Freak adding more special Pokemon as Pokedex completion rewards, and hopefully they do the same for the re-releases of Fire Red and Leaf Green. To wrap up Generation 9, we'll have to split the Collector Dex's 258 unique Pokemon between Violet and Legend ZA. Now, since Gen 9 is finally laid out, let's do a rundown of the entire Collector Dex. Gen 1 adds 185 Pokemon to the Collector Dex, with 151 found in the Living Dex, 24 coming from in-game trades, and 10 getting snagged for special collections. Gen 2 adds 141 Pokemon to the Collector Dex, with 125 coming from the Living Dex, 9 being added through in-game trades, and 7 being captured for special collections. Gen 3 adds 334 Pokemon to the Collector Dex, with 144 being found in the Living Dex, 18 coming from in-game trades, and 172 getting snagged for special collections. Gen 4 adds 364 Pokemon to the Collector Dex, with 140 being in the Living Dex, 14 added with in-game trades, and 210 coming from special collections. Gen 5 adds 520 Pokemon to the Collector Dex, with 178 coming from the Living Dex, 31 through in-game trades, and 311 being caught for special collections. Gen 6 adds 200 Pokemon to the Collector Dex, with 178 in the Living Dex, 12 via in-game trades, and 10 from special collections. Gen 7 adds 235 Pokemon to the Collector Dex, with 148 being caught for the Living Dex, 24 getting added through in-game trades, and 63 being gathered for special collections. Gen 8 adds a massive 581 Pokemon to the Collector Dex, with 245 for the Living Dex, 26 in-game trades, and 310 being featured in special collections. Finally, as Gen 9 currently stands, there are 258 unique Pokemon for the Collector Dex, with 188 Living Dex entries, 38 coming from in-game trades, and 32 getting caught for special collections. In total, there are 2,818 Pokemon in the Collector Dex, with 1,497 being caught for the Living Dex, 196 being obtained through in-game trades, then 1,125 being found in special collections. A decent chunk of the Collector Dex requires Capsule Magic, since we need to get 407 Pokemon, which makes up approximately 14% of the Collector Dex. This breaks down into 1 for Gen 1, 2 for Gen 2, 6 for Gen 3, 82 for Gen 4, 281 for Gen 5, 15 for Gen 6, 14 for Gen 7, 6 for Gen 8, and 0 for Gen 9. This video only covers the Pokemon you'll be catching in the 78 games used for the Collector Dex. However, I've gone over everything in my collection on my unscripted second channel, Capsule's Collection. That channel will have more frequent uploads while I work on episodes of Capsule the Collector, and in the first video I showcase my entire Pokemon collection and studio while breaking down the cost of both the Collector Dex and everything I have, including over 110 physical games, a ton of digital games, and all kinds of interesting pieces of Pokemon history, so make sure to check it out by clicking here. However, if you want to go ahead and jumpstart your own Collector Dex journey, make sure to watch my next video which features the best way to catch the Pokemon of Gen 1. Whichever video you choose, I look forward to helping you and future generations of Pokemon players as we all set off on our journey through the world of Pokemon to complete the Collector Dex.